All right, we got some roster cuts. I'm wearing ASU because rivalry week, and we got to talk about Tucson, I guess. But no, go away, Robyn. Roll the intro. We're talking.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On Coyotes, number one daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes. I am your host, Robyn Leonio, alongside Matthew Jacobson. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We're free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on the SiriusXM radio app and ad-free on Amazon Music. It's a great place to listen. We got a great show on today's episode because the Arizona Coyotes made a massive round of cuts, Matthew, to their roster from training camp ahead of the final two preseason games, one in Anaheim and one in Tucson, which comes later this weekend, the day after our rivalry game. But we'll get to that also. We'll get to those a little bit later. Mm-hmm. Let's get to these round of cuts because it is a massive round of cuts.
Yeah, it's like 18 players. It's something ridiculous. It's a lot of cuts, and TLDR, like the notable names not cut is like Max Szuber, and there's probably one more I'm forgetting. But it's a lot of players. So if you don't have anything to add beforehand, I'll just go ahead and list them off in boring list format.
Let's hear it.
Steven Comfort, Cam Crotty, Jan Yannick, Travis Barron, John Leonard, Ryan McGregor, Matt Villalta, Justin Kirkland, Milos Kellerman, Nathan Smith, Aku Ratu, Ben McCartney, Vladislav Kolyachonok, Joshua Doan, Michael Kesselring, Patrick Cook, Montana Onyebuchi, and Curtis Douglas with Austin Poganski? I cannot read. All right, it is late. I cannot read going to the Tucson training camp.
And, I mean, again, it's no surprise, as we talked about on Sunday, the Coyotes were ready for those cuts because after their game against Anaheim in Palm Springs, we knew because at most of those players, we knew we're going to face cuts, and the Tucson Roadrunners camp had started, would set to start on Monday, which was now earlier this week. So it only made sense that a massive round of cuts like that was going to happen because Tucson actually needs to ice players for their training camp, right?
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of why Doan, and as good of a training camp as he's had, he's not everyday NHL ready. Why not let him have a top 6 role in Tucson? He's not going to get in Arizona. If Logan Cooley is going to struggle to get his top 6 role earlier on in the season, Dylan Guenther is going to struggle to maintain his top 6 role early on in the season. They earn their minutes, they'll be fine, but you got to earn them first. Josh Doan isn't going to have that consistent role. Let him play top 6 in Tucson. Let him have that leadership role in Tucson. And remember, right now he is but a boy, but next year he may become a man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you and I thought Josh Doan was going to probably get to maybe the final game before getting sent down. Mm-hmm. But he needs to spend as much time as he can with the Roadrunners roster. I think that extra week can really make a difference. Mm-hmm. And that's what we all knew. We all knew he was going to be a Roadrunners player this season. It's no secret at all. I think the only thing it does surprise that it was this quick into the week. Given that, from my understanding, and this was something that was said by friend of the show, Jason Hernandez, and host of Locked On Ducks, he went and has said, I saw Josh Doan play, and he's like, he looked really good. I really liked him. And that's the understanding that I've been getting from a lot of people in the game in Palm Springs, that Josh Doan looked really good. So I think that's why it surprised a lot of people, why he got sent down. But let's look at the bigger picture. And like I said, he got sent down because he needed to spend that extra time with Tucson, as I mentioned just about a minute ago.
Well, yeah, because if he's going to try to take on a bigger role in Tucson, I only say leadership role because I'm going to assume he's going to have a role within like that, not the captain this year. Might not even wear a letter, but he could get an A on his sweater. But you want to have all the time you possibly can with the proper line combinations in practice, not this overarching big training camp with Arizona where this is a specific game plan you're going to run in Tucson. These are the guys you're going to be with in Tucson. Yeah, he's been mostly playing with the guys he's going to be playing with in Tucson, but now you just get to focus on that. So I think he's gotten to learn a little bit more at the NHL level, show off a little bit more at the NHL level, preseason NHL level, but now it's time to see if it can translate. And you know what? If he pulls a JJ Mosier where he plays really well down in Tucson, he can force his way up. But I don't anticipate him forcing his way up anytime soon. But I do still stand by what I said. He will likely get more than just a cup of coffee this season. I think he's earned it as long as he continues to work and it translates.
There is also that difference between JJ Mosier's playing and forcing his way up, and then Josh Doan trying to force his way up. JJ Mosier was able to do it on a team that lacked talent, to be honest. Let's be real. That team lacked a lot of talent, and they needed help in defense. So he took, JJ Mosier really took the opportunity for that. Josh Doan has kind of just in more of just an unfortunate circumstance where it's like, yeah, he's pretty good, and he could probably be pretty good if he was like coming at this point in his career a couple of seasons ago. Again, we're talking like if he was born a couple years earlier and whatever, he probably would had made a roster spot at this point. But because the Coyotes are improving on their depth, the team is a lot stronger this year. Why have to worry about Josh Doan right now? Let him develop.
Well, yeah, because again, he'll get that top 6 role. He'll get those minutes he wouldn't get here. Look, if just Liam O'Brien was the guy in front of him, then sure, he'd make the NHL roster. He'd get that fourth line time. I don't think it'd be very good for his development, but he would have a roster space. Better to just have him play top 6 in Tucson. Just whenever there's an injury, whenever something happens, he'll get a call up. He will, like I said, he will get more than just a cup of coffee in Arizona at some point this season. But it appears that they're not going to do the Barrett Hayton thing where they have him start for a couple of games, then send him down. They're just going to be like, no, you're going to start in Tucson and make us think this is a mistake. And if Donor plays really well.
Yeah, and I think the Coyotes are slowly, and the Roadrunners are slowly learning from the mistakes. Take a look at, this somewhat of the case of what, of the taste that Barrett Hayton got. Also take a look at, Dylan Strom's route. Both very, very different. Josh Doan's route is also very different than those two players. And you can tell that they're slowly learning with how to properly develop players that they expect to make a big impact eventually.
Yeah. And also they like to overcook. They like to throw their kids in the minors now and overbake them.
And that's a good thing. As we mentioned earlier this week, so listen every day, you know exactly what we think about the Coyotes overcooking their players in the minors. But we'll continue our thoughts about these cuts and kind of maybe get a little bit of a take a look at the preseason games coming up. We got one in Anaheim and one in Tucson coming up in just a bit. But first, a quick word from our sponsors on the show. And today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract and interview and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast and with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your business to make every dollar you count, and that's why Indeed, and that's why with Indeed you pay only for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So just be sure to go ahead and check out Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring. Just once again, it's Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed, you do.
All right, let's continue, Matthew, as we get through these roster cuts. Of
Mhm.
course, as we mentioned, Josh Doan was kind of the big name that passed through there. Actually, you know what? I want to go ahead and touch on really quick the, uh, you know, I guess the elephant in the room and the one player that was not mentioned in
Oh, you mean
Maximilian.
Maximilian Zuba?
Oh, it was Maximilian Szuber. I mean, I feel like there's been so much talk about Zuber over just this summer, right?
Mhm.
Just over just how much he's developed in just the last couple of years, and how great he looks, and he's making his strides towards becoming NHL ready. And I think the fact that he stuck around up until this point really kind of says something.
Yeah, and now that you reminded me, because Craig Morgan posted an article, I think yesterday morning, that all I did was respond, "Hey, he should be in Tucson," because I wanted to spread my propaganda. I hadn't got around to reading it yet because remember, last we checked in, last we had any update, he was still going to be loaned back in the DEL, despite winning a championship last year. He was still allegedly going to go back to the DEL. Apparently now plans have changed with how much of a stride he's taken in his game. It's looking like he's going to be playing in Tucson this year. So it's
And
interesting how he would make it past these rounds of cuts, and he'll hang on to the roster a little later.
I mean, I think that's probably one of the reasons why they're holding on to him this long,
Mm-hmm.
and probably taking him through the rest, like maybe close to the rest of training camp. Is they want to just take an extra look. They're like, all right, let's take a look at a couple extra things. Is it worth keeping you here in the North American game? Have you play in the AHL, or do we send you back to Europe? Because again, as we mentioned, the North American game and the European game or international game are very different. Um, if you can get him ready for the American game a lot sooner, I mean that sounds huge.
Yeah, and I want to let my opinion be known on this right now. I would rather kids that aren't quite ready be forced into the AHL early than forced in the NHL early. I would because it shows you a bit of a skill gap to know where you're at, and you can always loan them back out later. Like, hey, we're going to get you up to the AHL level for 20 games. You know what you got to work on. Go back to the DEL, go back to Liga, and then come back next year. But I would rather them be thrown to the fire at the AHL level because you still have a bit of a skill gap than the NHL level. I feel like that would be a better strategy. But this kid has been good, and also I want to read a couple small quotes from this article. Roadrunners camp begins Monday, so Craig Morgan article. In Tucson, Zuber is working his way back from a minor injury, so he won't be ready for the start of it, but he isn't expected to miss much time. While Tucson's players' roles have not been defined yet, Slaney expects Zuber to play significant minutes on the penalty kill. So he's probably going to be getting not only good top 4 minutes, but also special teams time. They have a
Yeah.
plan for this kid.
Oh, 100%. And if you're hearing that, in terms of, if you're hearing that from John Slaney, who's been an assistant coach for the Tucson Roadrunners since year one,
Mm-hmm.
that's some pretty reliable information to kind of give us the idea that, yeah, he's ready for to make the leap over here definitely at the very least the AHL level.
And honestly, I'm excited for Zuber because this kid is interesting. I want to pull up his profile real quick so I have a couple numbers to reference. But this kid's got good size, 6'3", 201 pounds, left shot defenseman, 21 years old. Last year in the DEL in 46 games, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points, 15 playoff games, 2 assists. The DEL is one of the leagues that does not have secondary assists, correct? A lot of the Euro leagues don't.
I think so. Yeah.
This kid is not coming in to be power play specialist, not coming in to be 40 assists. This kid, obviously, if they're planning for him to go on the penalty kill, you're looking at his defense. He has the body and the frame to do it, and his numbers looked pretty consistent. I know plus minus is a team stat, but who's on that team, who's on the ice, you play a key role on the ice as well. His plus minus is pretty consistent as well as one metric to look at. And whenever I get to watch him at the rookie camps, I think I got to watch him once last year. Not bad. And if his game has already made some strides, he's gotten better. I want to see him in Tucson. I will have more access to watching him in Tucson than I will over in Germany. I'm ready for this because Tucson, I will always stand by the AHL should primarily be your prospects. Even your third to seventh rounders. All right. You should only need to sign AHL contracts for a couple of veteran pieces and to help fill out your roster if there's injuries or if some guys genuinely aren't ready. I don't like when AHL rosters like half AHL contracts. It's weird to me. So as many Coyotes prospects, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I mean, there are those teams in the AHL who like, I think for a while they had like no affiliation, so like they had like 70% AHL players and then like 30% or whatever of like mixed bag of prospects from other teams. The AHL used to be a weird place.
Well, yeah, because the Chicago Wolves are one of the few that are independently owned, right? So they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna end our affiliations and we're gonna try to win. It's like, look, I have to agree with the hockey guy here. Maybe the AHL just isn't supposed to be profitable. It's just there as you mitigate losses and develop your talent. That's kind of what it works best as.
Yeah, we're seeing it's interesting though. We do see a completely different AHL here on the West Coast than the AHL that kind of business that's happening over on the Northeast.
It's interesting. I kind of like it. Feels more chill out here. It feels more like what the AHL should be. It's a developmental league. Yes, it is still a professional league technically, but it's a developmental league. You got guys that are going to be career AHLers that are very useful in those roles, help fill out your lineup, veteran presence. You got to have some of those guys, but it's always going to be, hey, how many of your prospects can you get on this team?
Yeah. Plus another thing too, one thing I enjoyed, I enjoy about, the AHL here on the West Coast is, those times when I had some friends who are fans or, I guess they cover their teams. One, the former host of Locked On Kings and the current host of Locked On Ducks, they came to visit in Tucson, and we literally had like a massive AHL crossover talking about just literally 2 episodes, I think even 3 episodes, Matthew, talking about AHL hockey. Like, and we're talking here on the West Coast, all in one place. Like, it's pretty cool. But that's just kind of just like a little side note for you.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, oh, that's interesting, but I also literally cover ASU hockey. So, like, I can get some mileage out of college hockey. I can imagine AHL is going to have a little more storylines as well because also who's developing? Who's going to be the next kid to break through? Who's going to be the next Connor Garland, Matthias Michelli?
And as someone that covered the Tucson Roadrunners for 7 years, it's pretty, it was pretty, that's accurate. Yeah, you can definitely see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to continue talking about this. Get our closing thoughts. Maybe get some just like brief thoughts about the upcoming preseason games. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later this week, including I believe even, I'll just say this, including tomorrow when you're going to expect to hear from our good friend Carl Pavlock, former co-host of Locked On Coyotes and current manager of the new independent Five for Howling. So expect that later this week. Should be fun.
He's coming for his job back.
I don't know about that. I don't know why I would replace a Sun Devil with another Sun Devil, but even though I already did this summer, but it.
But like I said, it's because he is quieter and more reserved. You think you can bully him out of his support, and I am too much of a loudmouth, boisterous personality. I know what you're doing. Anyway, you want to get into the sponsor of this show?
Let's get to it.
And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That is $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get into the action. The app is easy to use with a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, let's get to our closing thoughts here. And just get some, and again, as well as just a little bit brief preview, because the Coyotes are going up against the Ducks twice more. They're running against the Ducks a total of 3 times this preseason. They had the game in Palm Springs, the game in Anaheim coming up tomorrow when everyone's listening to this, as well as the game in Tucson coming up on Saturday. It's going to be exciting to see that. But a lot of players, most of the players that we have left are players who are going to make the final roster for the Coyotes, plus a couple others. As we mentioned, Max Szuber has made his way through so far, but he'll probably get sent down right before the end of it. Zach Sanford is still.
He's had a really good training camp so far.
Yeah,
he's NHL
still holding strong.
Good, but I would be comfortable with him getting a call up for a week.
Yeah, Michael Carcone, as we mentioned, he's likely going to make the final roster, so it doesn't surprise. But according to Camp Friendly, it just still labels him as training camp rather than NHL. And then the goaltenders, Anson Thornton and Ivan Prosvetov, still have not yet been cut, but that's probably due to happen pretty soon as well.
Thornton's old enough to be in the AHL, right? This is the year he's AA eligible.
Mm-hmm.
I really, I think we were talking about on the show. I really hope he lights a fire under Ivan's rear end, because I'm still gonna not give up my hope for this kid. Still a good goaltender,
especially with Ivan being on a contract year.
Mm-hmm. You know what you're getting with Vejmelka. He'll play above his head against really good opponents, poor against lesser opponents. He didn't look very good in that preseason game. It's preseason, so I'm not going to look too deep into it, but it just it's a reminder of what you're going to get with him. I would imagine at some point Ingram has a real shot of taking over the starting net. That would probably be the opportunity for Ivan to get a call up and get the backup job. I would imagine that Vejmelka might end up getting traded this year.
Now, here's the question. In the short term, as you mentioned, there's probably a chance that Vejmelka could get traded. There'll just be some movement with goaltenders.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, let's say Prosvetov and Thornton both get sent down later this week. That was 3 goaltenders in the minors. You got Thornton, Prosvetov, and Villalta. What are we... how are the Coyotes managing that?
You loan out Thornton because Villalta is there as a backup AHLer. If Ivan gets called up, someone gets injured, that's what he's there for. I'm hoping Thornton can outplay Villalta. I don't want to exactly say that he is at this point because he's still on the roster when Villalta is not. Villalta was always going to be in the AHL, so I don't want to put too much stock into that. But even though you don't have an ECHL affiliate, you can still loan out to an ECHL team or even technically another AHL team, though those are really weird situations. I would assume they would probably loan him out if it's Ivan and Villalta locked in.
Which would make sense, right? I think that would make sense. Although maybe that's why that Thornton and Prosvetov haven't been sent down yet. Maybe they're essentially going to get these last 2 games of the preseason, and that's their tryout. It's like, all right, are we gonna have to send loan? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? This is your tryout right here.
Yeah, it could be, and also Villalta. It is entirely possible, all right, because they need a goalie right now. But send Villalta down. There's nothing really more to evaluate with him. It is entirely possible, though I don't think it's likely. Just going to acknowledge the possibility that Thornton could beat out Villalta for the backup job, and it's Ivan and Anson Thornton as your 2 goalies. Don't necessarily think that will be the case, but it is certainly possible. But expect Prosy and Villalta.
Yeah, it would make. That in that sense, it would totally make sense. However way it plays out, it just kind of shows that the competition for goaltending in the Arizona Coyotes system is heating up. And it should spell for some even better competition in the years to come.
Yeah, it should. So, this is Ivan's last hurrah to prove something, because if they don't like what they see, and this is not something I'm getting from someone, like no one's calling me up, hey, this is what's going to happen. I can just imagine that if Prosotov isn't where they want him to be, he could be someone that's traded at the deadline to a team that just wants a little bit of goaltending depth, because it's like, okay, we're not going to re-sign him.
It makes sense, right? Anyways,
Possibly.
any final thoughts before we close things off?
Forks up.
They're down.
Nope. I always like poking the bear. Forks up. I literally have a pitchfork to poke the bear. Literally.
Anyway, that's going to be it for today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube and on the SiriusXM radio app. And, of course, on ad-free on Amazon Music. So be sure to check it out over there. Don't forget to interact with us on social media, though. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes. And on X at @LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leonio. At Jacobson is at the AZ Sports Guy. Interact with us, ask a question you might have. We might answer right back or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys staying safe out there. Hope you guys staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.